Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing session conducted by Project AYUDAR, this time based on Python. So I hope everybody's been having a wonderful Sunday afternoon. It's been quite a brilliant blue sky already. We've been having some rain issues over the past week, and I'm pretty sure everybody's glad to see the bright sun, shining sun on a Sunday. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to this absolutely gem of a session on Python writing. Now, most of you might have been familiarized yourself with Python, as it is quite an important programming software when it comes to your various engineering projects as well as assignments and assessments. But most of us, including myself, sometimes find it tedious in order to follow through with a subject such as Python. And if you've been keeping in track, the motivational music there is quite intriguing. So with that being said, I would now like to say that the session on Python is actually quite, it's a programming software that is quite easy to get to know. However, it's very, very difficult to master. But today we have quite the gentleman who will be able to give you a different outlook on this subject. Perhaps make it more interesting to you or make you see it in a more different manner, which will make it much easier for you in future projects so that you will be able to approach it in a much more cleaner, comfortable manner. That being said, let me introduce you to Mr. Takshila Tilakanayake. Now, of course, he is a bright, youthful gentleman with a keen interest in the various fields of mechatronics engineering. Now, these includes the fields of robotics and machine learning. But his interests are quite far, and he has many interests that go beyond the fields of mechatronics engineering as well. Identified as a passionate educator, trainer, and developer in the fields of robotics, data science, machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, and image processing. He holds numerous years of experience in such fields and is quite a gentleman who has taken his time off today to teach us a different outlook on what Python is. Now, I believe he also this gentleman completed his first class honors degree in mechanical engineering from our very own institute, and I'm pretty sure he's quite glad to be here today with us. His research interests include the likes of computer vision-based indoor navigation, object detection and image classification, and energy disintegration. That being said, Mr. Takshila, it's quite a joy to have you with us this early Sunday morning. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over to Mr. Takshila, I would now like to ask all of you to politely, if possible, to turn your cameras on, as Mr. Takshila has quite the more interactive session to make this Python session quite interesting. So keep your cameras on and your microphones muted at all times. Towards the end of the program, we will have a short question and answer session where we will be able to answer to all your various questions. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. And Mr. Takshila, this session is now yours.
Thank you so much, Ranuka. So I'm pleased to take a part on this workshop series. Right? So, and I welcome you all to the Python workshop, and I hope you will find this workshop interesting. And also there will be a Q&A session as well. So I'm happy to answer your question at the end, right? And yes.
Excuse me, sir. I am so sorry to intrude at this moment, but ladies and gentlemen, I believe the organizing committee has shared work materials related to the program shared by Mr. Takshila earlier. But if you have not received it, please feel free to look in the chat box below to touch into those materials. Have them ready, as this session is pre-planned by Mr. Takshila to be as interactive as possible. So please go through those materials and have them ready for later on. I'm so sorry, sir. You may continue on.
Yeah, thank you, Ranuka. So as I mentioned earlier, I hope you will find this workshop a very interesting one. And So I hope that you will use these concepts and you will get the path open for your final year research as well. And hopefully you will be able to use these concepts in your final year projects as well, right? So without wasting time, so we will go to the content since we have limited time, right? So basically in this workshop, what I'm trying to do is to introduce you to Python programming and also do some practical coding as well, right? And we will cover some major parts like the variables, data types, and arrays, loops, conditions, and functions as well. So then you will be able to get a very good understanding about the concepts and the main parts available in Python programming. And I have already shared these materials with you, and for the coding and the notes that I'm using today, they are in this Jupyter notebook format, right? So I hope you don't find it difficult to open this Jupyter note. I mean, or able use this Jupyter notebook and open these codes, right? So the codes are also already shared. So let me show the codes that we are using today, right? I hope you will receive them, and also you have received them. So right, so these are the materials that I'm using today, right? And all the codes and the notes, right? So they are in Jupyter notebook format. I mean, IPython notebook format. And if you want to open them, you have to use the Jupyter notebook, right? And if you don't have any idea about what is Jupyter notebook and how we are going to open these files using Jupyter notebook, you better refer to the video that I have provided. And in that video, I discuss how to use the Jupyter notebook and what is Jupyter notebook. So Jupyter notebook is simply a development environment we can use for coding, and as well as for including notes as well. And that video, right? So you will get that video soon. And that video basically covers how you can simply use the Jupyter notebook and open these codes and work on these codes, right? Okay. So let's get started, right? Let me now I'm going to zoom the screen a bit, right? So you won't be seeing the other things, but you will then see the content, right? So don't get confused. This is nothing but the Jupyter notebook I'm working with, right? So I'm only going to zoom it a bit, right? Okay, so today, as I mentioned, we are going to cover the basics of Python, and as I heard, probably we will have future sessions to cover image processing and computer vision, and also some machine learning basics as well. So this Python workshop, I'm planning to do we have 6 parts, but I'm not sure whether the time is enough to cover all the 6 parts, but let me try most of it, right? And this is the part 1, and basically before going on to Python programming, right? I know that you are from a coding background, in your first year you may have done C programming, and your second year you may have done Java or C++. So you are I assume that you are a bit familiar with programming, but let me introduce what is programming first, and then let's go to the Python programming, right? So programming, now when it comes to programming is a language. It's like a formal language, let's say English, Sinhala, or any other language, right? But the thing is, now this language is not used to communicate with people, but we are using it to communicate with machines, right? So these machines, basically, when I refer machines, it can be a computer, it can be a mobile device, and it can be any electronic device, right? So now if you want to get something done from a computer, or let's say a machine, right? So we have to provide set of instructions to that computer, right? So if you want to get something done, if you want to like surf on the internet, if you want to watch a film, if you want to read a document, if you want to type something in the computer, you want to like provide set of instructions to the computer, like otherwise the computer can't understand what we are trying to say or what we are trying to do, right? So what we have to do, we have to provide this set of instruction or this order to the computer, right? But the like you all, I hope that you know, computers and any electronic device, no matter how advanced they are, they can only understand binary, right? Binary language, like ones and zeros. So to be precise, high voltages and low voltages, right? So high voltages, low voltage, 1, 0, binary we say, right? So everything is built upon binary, right? Every machine works with binary, right? So I hope that you have done the electronic fundamentals, so you know how binary works and computers are working with binary, right? So what we have to do, okay, if you want to get something done from the computer, we have to provide that instruction to the computer, and the thing is that we have to provide it in in binary form, right? So we have, that means we have to express what we want from the computer, right, in a binary form, right? So in order to do that, we have to write those set of instructions, and we are not going to write it in English, or we are not going to write it in Sinhala, right? What we are going to do, we are going to use an intermediate language that's called programming language, right? So programming language is simply a language like English or Sinhala, but it has many rules, right? Now, in any other language also, like we can find the grammar, there are rules, right? So there are many like standards in like rules in a language, right? So in a programming language also, there are set of rules and syntaxes or standards, we say. So what we are going to do, we are going to write something not from Sinhala, not using English, but we are going to use programming language. Why? Like it's a structured language, or it has some standards and rules. So we are going to follow those standards and rules, and we are going to type our instructions that instructions like we used to get something done from the computer, right? So we are going to write them as instructions using a programming language, right? Then what happens? That script, or we say that set of instructions, then it needed to be transferred to a binary code, right? So therefore we need a translator, right? So there are two types of translators available mainly, right? So mainly I'm speaking like the main categories. So they are compilers and interpreters. Now don't worry about what is compilers and interpreters. So these are two types of translators, right? So there are two main types, compilers or interpreters. Python is the interpreter programming language, where like C++ and C and most of other programming languages are compiler based programming languages. Python is an interpreter based programming language. But anyway, understand it like a translator. So the instructions that we have typed using a programming language will be translated to a binary code, and it will be like then transferred to the computer. So computer then can do what we asked, right? So that's how a programming language, and that's what a programming language, and that's what a compiler and an interpreter is, right? Got it? So then one of the programming language, right? Python is one of the programming languages available, right? One of many programming languages available. Like, so there are, like, I can't exactly say, but there are like how many, right? Any idea how many programming languages are available, right? We can't say exactly, but like more than, I also can't exactly say, but you can visit like programming languages, right? And like you will find probably I have seen it in the Wikipedia as well. So there are many programming languages, like each right, each letter you have programming, you have many programming languages: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, right? So you have many programming, like probably you will find Python here, right? You will find Python here, right? So and C, A, B, right? So C, C++, C sharp, right? And A, B, right? Now C programming language, you are familiar with C, right? So C is like before C, there was A and B, right? Then only C, then C++, right? So there are many programming languages you can see, right? So probably close to like 500, right? I'm not sure, right? So many programming languages are available, but we are focusing on Python. Why? What's the reason, right? So why we use Python? Now, if you like, you have learned C++ and you have probably learned Java or C++. Now, did you have this problem? Why like a specific programming language? Why we use Python, or why we use Java, or why we use C++? So it's application dependent. Programming languages are application dependent, right? So you have to understand that first, right? That means, like, for example, if you are looking for a software-based application, that means if you want to develop a software, then probably you will use Java, right? So Java is good for mobile application development, web application development, and like PC application, software development. Java is commonly used, right? And when it comes to C or C++, what are the applications of C and C++ that we can use for? So C and C++, basically, they are used for hardware programming, like microcontrollers, right? And like processors, right? And hardware level programming. You have probably used it for like Arduino. In Arduino, you have this, or PIC, you have used, so hardware programming, microcontroller programming, robotics, we use C++. Then Python, when it comes to Python, where you can use Python. Python is like useful in many fields, and it's a very demanded language these days. Why? Now you have heard, like, so there are many applications, right? Recently, like many technology fields, I mean science fields, like civil engineering, and I mean computer science, or like medicine, I mean like healthcare, transportation, marketing, HR, right? So you have heard artificial intelligence, right? So in many fields, AI is used, right? Even in political science, even in forecasting, even in social media platforms, AI is used, right? So you are going to see, like, whenever you are going to search something on the Google, and when you come back to the Facebook, you can see an ad related to your search history, right? So that's basically AI, right? Some applications of AI related things. So what I'm trying to say, Python is used in like developments, like development applications of related to AI, machine learning, deep learning, data science, image processing, and robotic operating systems like ROS, and robots and web frameworks, right? So Python is using this type of applications, right? And Python has many, I'm not sure whether you have used, Python has like, there are many software platforms like modules, or we say libraries provided for Python, right? So TensorFlow, Keras, which are used for, now don't worry about these things, we are not going to discuss these things today, but I want to give you a basic understanding. Now TensorFlow, Keras, so these are libraries or modules, we say, or software platforms available for Python, available in Python, I would say, for neural networks, deep learning related things, artificial intelligence, and like OpenCV is a very good library available for image processing applications, and scikit-learn is for machine learning related applications, right? So then NumPy, Matplotlib, Pandas, they are like some data science and data mining related applications. We can use this NumPy, Matplotlib, and Pandas for data handling tasks as well, right? So there are like now Python. Why Python? If someone asks the question, why Python, right? You have to use Python when it comes to like AI, machine learning, image processing, right? Those things, right? So that's a well-known programming language for those kind of applications, right? So that's why we have to use, we have to learn Python, right? Otherwise, no use of learning a programming language if you don't know the application of it, right? Got it? Okay, so then probably we will now go to the content, right? And we will quickly go through the basics of the Python programming language, right? And hope you understood why we need Python. And first we will discuss about Python variables. What type of variables available in Python now? I assume basically you are familiar, Now, otherwise, I can't continue from very basics, like what's a programming language and what are variables, what's the loop and everything. I just assume that you are from a programming background and you have done this, you have covered these basic concepts. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain you how you can use, how you are going to use these basic programming concepts in Python, right? How we can implement a function in Python, how we can implement a condition if conditions in Python, how we can implement loops in Python, assuming that you have already familiar with those concepts, right? Okay, so Python has 5 standard main data types. They are called numbers, strings, lists, tuples, and dictionaries, right? So we will go through all 5, but let us start from numbers and strings, right? And these are the main types of variable types available in Python. And I will explain those things in a bit, but I want to then talk about 2 main things like Python identifiers. So identifiers, basically identifier is a custom name. That means a name that user is going to define, right? So if you are going to define a variable, or if you are going to define your own function, if you are going to define your own class, right? So that's a user defined name, right? So those are called identifiers, right? And there are a set of rules that you need to follow when you want to create an identifier, right? So probably you can read them, right? And reserved words are the keywords. That means those words has already those words have they have a meaning already, right? The keywords of the programming language, right? So they are called reserved words. Now these are the set of some of the reserved words available in, not all, but some of the reserved words available in Python, right? So that means you can't use them as identifiers, right? So understand it like that. You can't use them as identifiers since they have already a meaning, like they are used as keywords in a programming language, right? In Python, probably, right? So then we will quickly go through some we will discuss about how we can define and how we can use numbers and strings in Python. Then probably we will discuss about the list, tuples, and dictionaries, right? So this is how we are going to basically define a variable in Python. You can use any name, right? So you can even use your name, right? Any name you can use, and you have to just assign the value, right? So like Python, the syntax of Python is very easy, right? Since you don't have now, if you have if you are going to compare it with the program that you are going to write in C++ for C, right? So you probably have to have the data type, right? And you have to have a terminator like this semicolon, which causes huge errors, right, when missing. And Python, no need of having data types, and no need of having curly brackets, so no need of having semicolons, right? So Python syntax is very easy. Now you are wondering, okay, Python is quite easy. If you are seeing this for the first time, you think that, okay, this is the syntax in Python is quite easy. But the thing is, actually, Python is built up top of C++ and C, right? That means when we write a Python code, that Python code, actually it will be converted into a C++ or C code. Not always, not all the codes, but many codes, right? So that means Python is built top of C++. So Python is comparatively slow compared with C++ and Java. Why? When you are going right, coding in Python is quite easy. Why? Coding in Python is quite easy. The syntax is quite easy. No need to worry about the data type, no need to worry about the semicolons, no need to worry about the curly brackets and everything. But it's a bit slow compared to C and C++, since the code that you are going to write will be converted later to a C++, C, or any other code, right? So that conversion takes time, right? Okay, so this is how we are going to create a variable, right? And no data types, no need to mention the data type, right? So it can be a real value, it can be an integer value, no need to define the data type. And also you can use any name, right? So these are identifiers, so you can use any name, right? And this is how we are going to declare, I mean, strings, right? And there's a very important thing that in Python we don't have such a thing called characters, right? So we don't have such a thing called character. That means now in other programming language, I mean, many programming languages, you have characters, right? So that means when you have a single letter that's called a character, I mean that you have to use a character variable for saving that. But in Python, characters and strings. Now this is a string. So a string means like, you know, right? It can be a sentence, it can be a word, or it can be a paragraph. So that's called string in Python and many other programming languages. So when you are going to define a character, or I mean, if you are going to define a string or a character, right? Python it's not going to have different data types for characters and strings. They consider character as a string, right? So that means a single letter also considered as a string, right? Understood. So no difference between a character and a string. A character is also treated as a string in Python. And one most important thing, you can use either single inverted commas or double inverted commas. Doesn't matter, right? You can use, and there are no difference between a character and a string in Python. And also, you can use either single or double inverted commas, right? And then you can print them like this, right? Sorry. Right. So you can use the print command to print particular values, right? And it's going to keep the space for you, right? Understood? So this is how we are going to create variables in Python, and you can see the syntax is quite important. I mean, quite simple. Now, if I show you a program written in other programming language, right? So probably in C, right? So we'll find it right. So you have to include some libraries, right? This type of libraries, and you have to declare a main function probably, right? And then you have to define these variables, okay, like this. And you can't define it like this. What you have to, okay, you have to have this terminators, statement terminators, so we call semicolons, and you need to worry about the data type, right? You have to worry about the data type, and if you are creating a variable, I mean, right? So then you have to have this kind of double inverted commas, and strings are also available in C++, right? So then you have to define it like this. So this is how we are going to. Now you will find that compared to this, you will find the syntax is quite easy, right? But now I need you to understand a simple thing. Now here we are in a very, I mean, very structured manner. I mean, when you are going to write codes in C++. Now don't worry about this coding if you are not familiar with C++. Now I want to print these things and show you, let me print a value, right? Now I want to show you something. Now here in C++ or C and even Java, we have these curly brackets, right? And we have these statement terminators, right? So if you run this one, right? So it's right. It's you are going to see the output like this, right? This is in C++. But the same code will work, right? Now, if you write it using a one line like this, right? Right. So if you write the same thing like this, right? Understood? This will still give the same output, right? Doesn't matter, right? So you can see that. So that means the syntax, I mean the the spacing and others, like, but the thing is like, yeah, this will provide the exact output, but it's quite hard us to like read the code, right, and understand, right? But still it works, right? That means you don't need to have this, I mean, this nice syntax and everything. Still the code works without, I mean, the terminators are there. The terminator says, okay, this line is over, this statement is over, and this is marking like these curly brackets are marking, basically they are marking blocks, right? So this works without any like syntax, right? But Python, right? Since Python like doesn't have this semicolons and this block markers like the curly brackets, right? So if there is a small mistake like this in syntax, it will give you error, right? So Python is quite sensitive to syntax, right? So you can't make any, right, mistakes like this in Python, but in C++ and other programming languages, no, it's not an issue, right? So keep that thing in mind. And yeah, so then you can do the multiple assigning as well. Like, I mean, you can like define 3 variables like this and assign a single value for them, right? And this is how we are going to do the multiple value assignment in a single line, right? A, B, C equal 1, 2, 3, and right, so whatever, right? So now like Python identify, you can see like the variables, right? The numbers and strings, you can still use any name. I mean, no need to worry about the data types, no need to mention the data type. Python, like in Python, we are not going to worry about the data type. Python treats all these, I mean, Python treats these numbers, strings, lists, tuples, dictionaries as objects. So no need to mention the data type, right? Got it? Okay. So then quickly we will go to the next topic, like the right. I mean, we have already discussed about the strings, but I want to show a few things comes under strings, right? So Python strings, like you can define strings like this, right? Right. And if you print it, right, you are going to see the whole string, right? And this string, actually, the string treats as strings are treated as arrays, right? So it is treated as an array, like a character array like this, right? So that means you have indexes for each and every character, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Starting from 0 and 10, right? And like I missed this. Okay, so hello world, right? So now basically you can access characters in character level. Like if you print var0, that means it refers to like the 0 index of the string. That means h, right? Ready? And also if you want to like you can give a range as well, right? So 2 to 5, let's say, right? 2 to 5. Then it will print from 2 to 5. Now there's a very important thing in Python, right? So when you give a range, so this is applicable everywhere, right? This is applicable everywhere. Like 2 to 5, that means it start from 2 and go up to 4. Now this is like, okay, let me like go up to 7, right? 2 to 7, let's say, right? So you can see like it start from 2, right? And go up to 6, not 7, right? So this is applicable everywhere in Python. I mean, when you provide a range, the upper value of the range, like will be 1 less than the given value, right? 1 less than the given value. So we have given 2 to 7, so it's not taking 7, but it takes up to 6, right? So keep that thing in mind. This will be useful in our future explanations as well, right? And also like if the upper limit is not provided, this will go up to end, right? This will go up to end, right? So starting from 2 up to end, right? And like this is a singular thing, right? So if you haven't provided the starting value, the lower limit, then it starts from 0, right? Start from the beginning, right? So this is like up to 7. So this is 2 to 7. This is from 2 to end. This is up to 7 simply, right? So hello W, 0 to 6, right? And also there are like some other things as well, like you can like the -1 is also there. -1 in the last element. That means D, right? See, right? And if you call like -2, the second last L. See, understood, right? And if you define it like up to -2, then what happens? So it will go up to R, right? Right. Understood. So hope you understood, right? Ready? Okay. So then, yeah. So you can add values to strings as well. Like if you want, like okay, var2, another variable, var1 plus. I'm going to add something, right? So I'm going to add another string, right? So if you print like var2 now, right? So it's basically this plus this, right? So string addition, right? So simply it could be done like this, right? So string addition. So I add a sample to the previous string, the var, right? Okay, so then I will discuss about. So you have the basic understanding about numbers and strings, right? But before going on to list tuple dictionaries, right? I'm going to like cover like another like additional topic, let's say, right? Python inputs. That means how we can we will move on to the list tuples dictionaries later. So in this one, I'm going to explain you how we can take inputs from Python, right? So user inputs, like how we can get inputs from the keyboard, right? User inputs, right? So there's a function, an inbuilt function called input, right? So you can use this inbuilt function, right? And then you can take the value that the user is going to input to this variable X, right? So basically, if you run this one, and I'm going to print the X like this, right? So if you run this one, you will see something like this, right? So X equals input and print the X value. So we are going to print the X value. Now you can see that there's a cursor that is blinking. Okay, so now we are going to take this input, right? Give me a second. Okay, so now we take an input, right? And that input is taken to X variable, and we are going to print it here, right? Now you can see the cursor is blinking, so that means the interpreter waits us to enter a value, right? So now you can enter any value, right? So then it will be taken, right? And further, you can provide a message to the user like this as well. Like, I mean, earlier we didn't provide anything, right? Now we can provide a particular value, like, I mean, particular string, I mean, a message. So what happens now, when you run this, the same thing as the early example, what I have done here, only I have included a string, enter value for X, right? So when you run this, what happens, basically, like it shows us like a guy, I mean, this message is shown. Now the user is aware of what needed to be done. So enter value for X, right? So customized message is provided. So you can then, right? Okay, now here in the third example, can you see, right? I have two inputs, like, and I'm going to take those inputs like to X and Y, right? The first input is we have provided a message, enter value for X, right? And in the second input, we have provided a message like enter value for Y. And those two values are taken to X and Y respectively. And you can see, okay, the first message is appeared here, enter value for x, right? So let's say 50, right? And we are going to enter another value like 30. Now, what we are expecting, x to be 50 and y to be 30. And when you provide, I mean, we are then going to print the addition, right? X plus y. So you can see we are going to provide the addition, I mean, print the addition, x and y. But the thing is, you are going to, like, actually, when you run this, you are not going to see 80, right? Instead of 80, you will see like 530. I mean, 50 and 30, like 5030. Why? Now, then you should understand what happens here. Basically, when you take an input from Python using the input command, right? When you take an input from Python using the input command, what happens basically? It takes them to strings, right? So they will be taken as strings. That's what happens, right? So x and y are taken as strings. So this will be a string addition, right? So in order to get rid of that, right? What we can do is we can use this eval function, right? So what we are basically going to do, right? Now you can do it like this as well. X equal eval x, or else, like, I mean, you can do it like this as well, like int x and y equal int y. So we know that the input function, it takes the value that user going to enter as a string, right? No matter, like, you are going to enter an integer or a float or a string, nothing, right? But I mean, it doesn't matter. It's going to take it as a string, right? No matter it's a number. So what happens? What we are going to do here? We are going to basically convert that string into an integer. So this works, right? So this works fine. Now you can see it works fine with the values, but unfortunately, this won't work with like float values. See why we are trying to convert a float value to like an integer. So this won't work, right? So therefore, we have a function called eval. So very useful and a very robust function, right? Now this can like basically avoid that issue, right? This can basically avoid that issue. And also this eval is a very powerful function. What I mean, now you can enter like something like a expression as well, right? Right. So 2 plus 10 plus 2 is 12 and 8 into 4 is 24. So you are going to see like 32. So 32. 32 plus 12, 44. Right. So it can handle an expression as well. Right. So that means basically, right. So if I like ask you to print, print eval, or will that do something like this? Okay, c equals or y equal eval, and I'm going to provide I mean, right? So I'm going to provide like expression in terms of a string, right? So then you print it like it will be executed. That expression will be executed, and you are going to get. So eval is a very powerful function. So what we are going to do, instead of doing it separately, what we can do, right? Instead of doing this separately, what we can do is like the same thing I'm going to put here. Right? So that does the conversion, the appropriate conversion, right? And then we are going to see the like the. I mean, then it will convert it to a appropriate value, appropriate format, right? Okay. So then you have a quiz, right? So you have a quiz. Write a Python program takes 2 input from the user variables, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to discuss this now, right? Instead of doing that, I will provide you the answers later, right? So I keep this you to try, right? Then you can the thing, I mean, the answers are also given, but the explanation I will provide later, right? The answers are also provided. here. The explanation I will provide it later, so you can try them yourself as well, right? Okay, so the first part, I will conclude the first part of the tutorial here, right? So basically we have discussed about numbers and strings, then we have to go through the list, tuples and dictionaries, right? So I'm going to go to the second part of the tutorial, I mean the workshop, part 2, right? So in this one, I'm going to discuss about like arrays in Python, right? And under arrays, we are going to discuss about 3 things: list, tuples, and dictionaries, right? And like actually, there is no such a thing called arrays in Python, right? There's no such a thing called arrays in Python. But the thing is, like, for your understanding only, I have provided like arrays in Python. Otherwise, don't like, we won't see something called arrays in Python. But instead of arrays, we have 3 alternatives. 3 alternatives: list, tuples, and dictionaries. I use the term arrays, like, since you are familiar with arrays, like you have done this in C++, probably you have done it in C++, I mean C and Java as well, right? So that's why I'm referring it as arrays, but actually there is no such a thing called arrays in Python, right? So basically, what's an array, right? Array is basically a memory, like what we call a data structure, which can hold a sequence of action, sequence of data, right? Sequence of data, right? Got it? So for example, in C, you know that you can create an array like this: int x equal, probably you have to refer it like this: int x equal, int x 5, int x 5, and then you can, right? So then what happens that x has 5 elements. So if you declare it like this in other programming languages, the x has 5 elements, and they are sequence, like they are in the sequence order, in the sense like in the RAM they will be stored in consecutive memory locations. That's why we call it sequence, right? So then if you define it like this in other programming languages, what will happen? Like the x will have 5 components, so 5 elements, we can say: x0, x1, x2, x3, x4. In order to access a particular value, right? In order to access a particular value, you have, like, okay, if you want to access the first value, then you probably use it like this: x0, right? And in the memory, so this is for the additional knowledge, for if you take a value like this in the memory, it will be saved in byte format, right? So if you want to store 10, right, like if you have integer type array, so there will be 32 bits. Why? There are 4 bytes reserved for a integer, so that means 32 bits, 4 into 8, and 10 will be saved like 0, 1, 0, 1, right? Like 2 and 8, then that gives you 10, right? So this is the additional thing, not essential for our explanation today. This is additional thing, but the main thing that I want you to understand from this explanation is that array is a sequence of elements, right? And if you like store 5 elements like this, they will be stored like x0, x1, x2, x3, and x4, right? Though
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have come across a small connection issue, but don't worry, it'll be all sorted out soon. Until then, everybody, how has the session been so far? Has everybody found it interesting? Please do feel free to ask questions in the chat box below. Direct your questions to us and we will direct them to Sir, who will be more than willing to answer these questions. Ladies and gentlemen, the chiller will join in soon. Soon as the power is back, there is a small issue. I believe a lot of us have been facing with these issues regarding power. So, overall, how has everybody been? I believe exams and everything have been quite daunting to most of us, but Python, how has Sir's approach been? I believe all of you are quite interesting to know. I, for one, am, because he's going through the basics and he's approaching to a much more, he has gone through the basics and is approaching to much more demanding content in a very, how do you say, comfortable manner. So, I believe all of you have any questions you might have, you may ask. Okay, so let me just go through by what AYUDAR has done so far. There will be an open CV writing session organized quite soon. So please do take part in these, as these are quite important to a majority of you as you head out to training. Other than that, I believe we will be organizing more sessions on I believe we'll be organizing more sessions regarding more programming languages, few more teasers to come in the future, sessions on programming, hardware related, and other sessions regarding professionalism. So do stay part with AYUDAR as well as the Engineering Research and Innovation Club. If anybody of here is not yet part of the Engineering Research and Innovation Club, don't worry, we are warmly welcoming all of you to take part and be part of a great of a great set of programs that we have planned for the future. As you all know, the program on construction engineers was quite a success with up to 100 participants there. And I believe a majority of civil engineers from within the university and in certain cases outside the university had quite the time learning about civil engineering from professionals from the industry. So if you guys also have any ideas on more programs that you guys would want to take part in, please take the time off, join in with AYUDAR, and just share your ideas and help us out. So that being said, I believe Sir will be joining in soon. Yes, of course, the recording will be available once the executive committee approves the release of it. Once the recording has been approved, it will be placed out. The next will be that how would I say? Yeah, the materials. So Sir has already shared a number of materials. So please, I believe you would have gone through these materials early on, but if you haven't, please contact any member of the organization and they will get back to you with the materials. The materials which they might, if there are extra materials used in this very program, we will be sharing those as well after the session. I believe everybody, a majority of you are coming from AYUDAR itself as participants for your research programs. I do hope your abstract writing session abstracts have been taken in and you've been organizing. Do know that the abstract writing session will conclude with the best abstracts being used for a magazine, which we have been planning to make towards the future, but more details on that later. Your papers are quite important to us as we are willing to push your innovative abilities to the future. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, sir will be joining in soon. Just if we could have your kind patience for a little while longer, I believe we can continue on with the session. So please wait for the development. That being said, it's quite a wonderful Sunday morning. I do hope everybody is home safe and sound, as it's been quite a, how do you say, troublesome period for most of us. I do hope everybody's vaccinated and staying safe at home. If you haven't been vaccinated, I do encourage you to please take your vaccination soon to avoid yourself of any risk. It's not that we can do much about it, but it's our best to do and follow the guidelines as best suited. Other than that, I hope everybody has approached their exams quite well and you've been approached training, especially for your second and third years. I do believe there are certain first years joined in with this session. To those young ladies and gentlemen joined in, welcome to the Engineering Research and Innovation Club. Once again, apologies. We do not own the Ceylon Electricity Board, and they take out power when they feel fit to do some repairs. So we'll join him soon, and he will continue on the session. I believe he is as frustrated as the majority of us right now, but I believe he will conclude with the session and give you a more satisfying ending. And that being said, sir has joined in. Of course, how great it is. I am smiling right now. Welcome back, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hold on. I can't hear you, sir. Sorry. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
All right, so that's quite wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Takshila has rejoined us, and I hope everybody's glad enough to conclude with the session. Sir, I believe the reasons for your disconnection are far beyond your control, but will you be willing to take over now, sir, and go on with the session?
Yeah, sure.
All right, wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with the session once again. Thank you so much for being an awesome audience and for taking part with us. So we will conclude with the session. I will hand over now to Mr. Takshila. Sir, the session is once again yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Anaka. So sorry for the interruption, right? So those things happen, right? So anyway, I hope you don't mind, and we'll continue from where we left, right? So I was, let me zoom it a bit. Okay, so what I was discussing, the arrays in Python. So there is no such a thing called arrays in Python, but we have three alternatives, as I mentioned, like list, tuples, and dictionaries, right? And we will quickly go through, one by one, right? So don't worry about these three. Tuples and dictionary. First, we'll go through lists, and then we will discuss about these tuples and dictionaries, right? Okay, so list is basically, as the name suggests, right? So list is basically type of an array, right? We can hold sequence of elements, right? Sequence of elements. So the specialty about a list in Python, right? So it's like this is how we are going to you can define it like this. Any name you can use, and you have to use square brackets, right? Square brackets. Then you are going to have the values, and note that you can have any value inside a list. You can save any value inside this list, right? That means what I wanted to say, okay, it can hold integers, floats, and strings as well. Now, but in most of the other programming languages, once you declared it like int, let's say, for example, right? When you declare it like int x, for example, so you can have, I mean, you can only save integers there, right? Only integers, right? So that's obvious now. You have defined like int. So that means the data type of this array is int. So you can only have, you can only like provide integers there, right, to the array. No any other data type. But in Python, no such a thing. You can, I mean, array can hold anything. Now this is like even, I mean, now here you can see that numbers and strings are there. But even you can save images. You can save videos, right? So you can save actually any object in Python in a list, right? Probably we will have a chance to have a look again, I mean, later workshop. So you can save images, right? Arrays as well, right? Got it? Inside this list, right? Python, that means Python list can hold anything, right? Not only numbers and strings, it can even hold images as well, right? And even you can like include another array, right? I mean, another list, sorry, another list. See? So list inside a list, right? Sorry. So you can hold, I mean, we can include anything in a list, right? So then, yeah, basically, this is how you can do it. And as usual, you can access them sorry, like the element like 0, 1, 2, 3, like so the last element -1, we discussed about these things earlier, right? Last element -1, so the last element itself array, right? Itself is array, right? And the second last element is hello, right? Likewise. So and also, right? So you can access it as you want, right? And so this is how a list can be defined in Python, right? And here you can see another, like this is only here only integers are there, right? So you can see like several integers are there, and you can do this like 0 to 3. That means okay, from 0 to 3, that means 0 to 2, right? 0 to 3. I told you like the upper limit will be always 1 less than the given value, right? So 10, 20, 40, and up to 3. Likewise, you have many indexing methods. So these are indexing methods. So you can see like the values can be sliced and you can take them, right? 2 to 5, 3 to end, up to 3, 0 to 3, likewise. Understood? So for example, up to -2, 2 to -2, up to -2, right? So we have discussed about this indexing in strings as well. You can remember, right? Right. So that's how Python list. So few things to remember, right? Python list can hold anything, even image can be included, right? And like no need to mention the size of the array, right? No need to mention the size. I mean, how many elements are there, right? So no data types, no size. Those need not. I mean, those are not required to be given, right? And when you have a list, right, you can update the list like this. For example, now there is a list called my list, which has physics, chemistry, 1997 and 2000, right? So you can access the value, the second element. So second element will be 0, 1, 2, right? So second element will be like, you know, the indexing starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So the second index is when you can print it, you will see 1997. And like if you want to update it, you can simply assign a different value like this, right? So here you can see, right? So if you print the my list after the update, right? After the modification, if you print it, you are going to see it like this, right? So 1997 now becomes 2001, right? This is only for example, right? Then if you want to delete a list element, you can do it like this, right? So now the same list is considered, and you are going to print it, and then you are going to delete the second element. That means 1997 will be deleted, and then you can see, right? So 1997 is removed, and now there are only 3 elements, right? So deleting can be done like this. And also in for lists in Python, we have some inbuilt functions and methods, right? So what we will discuss about these functions and methods later, right? We will first discuss about functions. So there are inbuilt functions that we can use with lists, right? So if you want to check the size of a list, that means how many elements are there, you can use the length function. So how we are going to use it, you have to have a list, and that list will be passed to this function. So this length is a function, and it's an inbuilt function in Python. So those are inbuilt functions. By default, they are in the code. I mean, they are there, and so you have to pass the length function. I mean, you have to pass the particular list to the length function, and it returns the size of the list, right? Size of this list, right? So there is the list function, and we pass the length function, and we pass the list, and then it returns us how many elements are there, right? So basically, if you run this, you will see that 3. So I mean, you may be wondering, okay, when you are going to use this length for what kind of applications? We will see those applications later, right? But for now, we will just cover the elements first and theory parts first, and later we will see the applications of these, right? Ready? So then if you want, like, you can have the max value of a list, right? The max value of the list and min value and the summation of the list you can take, right? For right. So here now you can see we have 2 lists. If you can't exactly understand what I have done here, I will define it as 2 lists separately. Right. Okay, so 2 lists are there, and the maximum of this list, right? So this is like strings, right? So now you may be wondering how we can get the maximum of a string. So that will be taken by the alphabetical order, right? The ascending order, the ascending alphabetical order, right? So the max is P, right? The min will be C. So that will be C++ will be the minimum value, and Python is the last value. I mean the max value. So it's considers the alphabetical ascending order. And the other thing, like if there are 2 names in the same, so the first character will be compared first, right? First character will be compared, and like if you have the same character, right, in 2 strings, then the second character will be compared, right? So this is the numerical maximum, right? Basically, the list to the numerical maximum. And the summation also can be taken like right. So then this is the summation of the set of values, right? So summation, maximum, minimum, length, and can be taken. So these are called inbuilt list functions, right? Inbuilt list functions. And we have like methods as well, list methods. Now, I'm not sure whether you have, whether you are familiar with the difference between a function and a method, right? Function and a method. Like method, this concept comes in OOP, object-oriented programming, but I'm not going to I explain it here now, right? I will only explain the usage of it, right? But this is not a function, this is a method. This comes with the the topic OOP, right? But anyway, I will explain you the usage, right? Now assume that there is a list like this and you want to append, right? So appending in the sense that you are going to include another value at the end of the list, right? So that's what you call appending, right? So here you have a list originally like C++, Java, Python, and you are going to like list1.append. Now the major difference between a function and, I mean, this is not the difference, but this is also the difference you can see, right? The function you call, like you are going to pass the list into the function, right? we are going to pass the list into the function. So that's how the functions are called. See, max, we pass the list to the max function likewise. But the methods are called not like that. We are going to call it like list dot append, list dot count, list dot index likewise, right? So that's how the methods are called. Something with OOP, right? And here the list one is basically like C++, Java, Python, and we are going to call like list one dot append C#. So what happened? List one now becomes C. Now the C# is appended, right? So that means included at the end, right? And you can also use the count method, right? So there are many methods available. I'm not going to explain each of them, right? But I will explain few. Now here count. So here a list is there, list called a list, and I'm going to count how many 1, 2, 3 elements are there. So a list count 1, 2, 3, right? So let's see. So it say there are 2 1 2 3s in this a list, and I'm going to count for Sarah as well. How many Sarahs are there? So that is 1, right? So you can count for a particular value using this count method, right? So then there are many other methods available. I'm not going to explain them, right? All of them, right? There are many, and you can see the index as well. I will explain probably that, right? So here the sort function is there. Sort is basically like you can arrange it in the ascending order or the descending order, right? Now I'm going to like see so I'm going to call the list one index method, and I'm going to pass chemistry, and I'm going that function will return something called idx, and let me print idx and see what happens, right? So when you print idx, it says 2. That means like we are checking the index of the chemistry. That means where the index is located, right? So you know that 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we check what's the index of the chemistry. So chemistry is at the second element. So that's what the index. That's how you can check for the index, right? So these methods are these are very useful, right? In many applications, we will probably see them later, right? So then I'm going to go to tuples, right? So we have discussed the basic stuff under the list topic, and now we are going to move on to the tuples topic, right? So tuple is quite similar to the now I haven't discussed every method available, so I hope you can go through the other and understand it, since the codes and the explanation is also there, right? So tuple is quite similar to a list with one major difference, right? Tuples are quite similar to list with one major difference, right? So we'll define a tuple. Now, when you define a tuple, you can understand like there's a difference in the appearance also, right? So the lists are declared with square brackets, and the tuples are declared with round brackets, right? So that's a major difference in the appearance, right? Round and square brackets, right? So tuples are quite the same, compared to the lists, right? So you can still access the values, right? So you can you can access the values, right? And right? And also the length and the maximum, those things also works, right? The length probably. So everything works fine in a tuple, right? So it works as a list, but one difference, right? Now you can see they could be accessed, right? There's tuple can be declared as this as well, right? Without round brackets, it can be declared, right? And there's a major difference, right? you won't be able to update the tuple or modify a tuple. That means once a tuple is declared, right, you can't modify that. You can't update that tuple, right? That means, for example, in other words, we can say tuples are read-only lists. Read-only lists. That means you can't change it after defining it, right? Right? After defining it, you won't be able to change it, I mean, modify it, right? But you can see like list can be modified, right? So here you can see list, we can modify it. You can even delete it, right? So you can assign different values, right? Right. So if you want, you can change the value, you can update, and you can append even. Right? So you can see like the append can be done, right? Appending and modifying, replacing, everything is possible in a list. But when it comes to tuple, no, you can't. It says like tuple object does not support item assignments, and even like methods like append are not also available. That means you won't be able to modify, right? Got it? But you can like declare new tuples, right? You can declare new tuples, but you can't modify a existing tuple. That's what tuple is about, right? And if you really want to modify a tuple, you probably have to convert it to a list. Right? So there's a tuple like this, and you can do the converting like this. So tuple can be converted to a list and take it, convert it to a list, and then you can do the whatever the modifications. But tuple directly, original tuple cannot be modified, right? But you can convert it to a list, and then you can do whatever the modifications, right? So now you may be wondering, okay, why there is such a thing called tuples? Why there is such a type of array called tuple, which has like which don't have the ability of modifying it, right? What's the application? What are the applications, right? So there are many applications, and there are many advantages and uses in tuples. Probably we'll discuss about them later, right? Okay, so then the last thing comes under arrays in Python topic, dictionaries, right? So this is a very common topic, comes in other programming languages as well, right? But in Python also this appears now, but we are not going to see this commonly in C++, C, and Java, but some other programming languages also have this concept called dictionaries, right? So dictionary is a very useful and a very handy tool that you can use, right? I will explain you what dictionary is. But before going to dictionary, I will first declare a list and compare a dictionary with a list. Then I will explain what the dictionary, right? So this is a normal list you can see, right? So it has a, for example, let's assume this is a list, and this list contains like the name of a student and maths marks, physics marks, chemistry marks, and the average of the student, for example, right? Got it? So this contains the like details of a student, like the name, maths marks, physics marks, chemistry marks, and the average, right? So then I'm going to like print them. Now you know that if you want to like get the name, you had like this. I mean, this list has index, so it's right. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Then when you print it, what happens, right? If you want to access the name, you probably have to say, okay, student 0. I want student 0. That means when you have a list, you need to refer it by the index, right? So if you want to get the value, right, value of a list, you need to refer it by the index. So that's something obvious you have done in other programming languages as well, right? So if you want to get this 80 mark, I mean this 80, probably the maths marks, then you have to say student 1, right? So that kind of thing is there. So when you run this, you are going to see the output, right? So that means when you are using lists, what you have to have, like you have to have an idea, okay, the 0 index contains the name, the first index contains the maths marks, the third index physics, and the fourth index, finally it has the average. Like you have to keep them in your mind, or you have to like note them. That means you need to be aware about that, right? So dictionaries provide a solution for that, right? Without memorizing it or without having it like that, what you can do, you can give a custom index. That means the index can be defined by you, right? The index, like in the list, you can see it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you can give a custom index, and it can be a string, it can be a number, it can be anything, right? So if you can provide like, okay, student name, maths, physics, instead of calling student 0, if there's a method like you can call like student name, like that means no need to memorize the order, or no need to memorize the indexes for each element, right? Now what you can do, you can just call it by the customized name, like this name, math, physics, chemistry, average, right? Without referring it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So how we are going to do that? You are going to do it using a dictionary, right? So this is how a typical dictionary looks like, right? You have square bracket, curly brackets, right? Now list, square brackets, tuple, round brackets, and here now you have the dictionaries with curly brackets, right? So you have to understand the differences. And in dictionary, you have pairs here. So pairs, each pair is separated by a comma. Can you see? There are pairs, right? And the first value is known as the key, and this value is known as the value, right? Key and value pair. So there are key and value pair, key, value, right? So this is called like key one. So this is the key one, and this is the value one. This is the key 2. This is the value 2. Key 3, value 3. Key 4, value 4. Key 5, value 5, likewise. Right? Key and value, right? Now, when you have these pairs, like the pair in between pair, like it's separated by colon, right? And the special thing about this, if you want to get the value, you have to call it by the key. If you want to get the value, you want to call it by the key. Like if you want to get the name, you have to call it by the key. If you want to get this 80, you need to call it by the maths, instead of calling it by 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So that's how a dictionary works, right? And now, like you can have any custom key, right? And also this is not necessary to be like a string. You can have like, so this is the key, now this is the value, right? No matter what's the key, you can have your own key. I mean, it can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a character, anything. Now, if you want to get this John, you have to call it by 5555. Understood? And like not near to be strings, like you can have like, I mean, this makes no sense, right? This makes no sense. But if you want to get the physics marks, now you have to call it by probably like 10.5, 10.25. Right? Now, I mean, this makes no sense, but I wanted to show you that there are key and value pairs, and also the most important thing, like you can define any customized name for key. Right? Got it? And if you want to like update a particular value, right? Now you can see like the name is John, and here if you want to update it to like another separate name, like you can do it like this, name, student name, then you have to change it for any other name, you can do it. Right? And if you want to like, now here for example, here you can see that they are like, you may be wondering whether we can add new key and value pair, right? Whether we can like, okay, for example, now here there's name, math, physics, chemistry, and physics marks are there. Like, is it possible to add the average? I mean, now in the original definition, the average is not there. So can we add it separately later? Is it possible to add it later after defining it? Yes, it's possible. Like if you say student average, now student average is not already there. So it will, if it will add that key, and this value will be assigned. Now what I'm going to do, like I'm going to get maths, physics, and chemistry and divide it by 3, and there will be a key created called average, and with the value this, right? Now earlier the average was not there, so when we like this is, I mean, this is the point. If you are going to call a already existing key, that value will be replaced. දැන්ට තියෙන key එකක් නම් ඒ key එකේ තියෙන value එක replace වෙනවා, right? If you are going to like call to a not existing key, that key will be created and the particular value will be assigned, right? Like this, right? And also you can delete the elements in the dictionaries, right? So if you want, right? Got it? And some other, yeah. Then dictionaries also have some right, some methods and functions, right? So probably you will, I have given some examples, so probably you can right, you can refer them. I have given some examples as well, and the explanation is also given, so I hope you can go through these things and figure them out yourselves, right? And I will provide one, I will explain one method here, right? So you can like right, so you can what you can do, I mean, when you, if you want to define a dictionary, you can define it like this as well. You can have the keys separately and values separately in 2 different lists, right? Keys and values in 2 different lists. Now 2 independent and 2 different lists are there, right? Keys and values, right? Then you can use this zip keyword. Zip, you know what zip is, right? So you can zip these 2 together, right? Got it? And then you can convert it to a dictionary, right? So then a nice dictionary will be created like this, right? So that's also possible. Likewise, there are many methods available. We can do a lot of things, right? So I hope you will go through these things and try to understand how these things are done, and the examples are also given, right? And there's another quiz available, right, for dictionaries, right? Now you may be wondering where dictionaries are used. Dictionaries can be used in many applications, like when you pass data to mobile applications from Python, and when you receive data from mobile over the applications to Python, like JSON objects. Now those are a bit advanced things, but there are many applications available for dictionaries, and dictionaries makes our lives easy when we do coding, right? Now, I mean, instead of using a list, there are places or there are situations that we can use dictionaries, and it will save our time and our our code, right? Instead of using a list, right? So dictionaries are very useful, and it will make the code efficient, right? So we will discuss about the applications later, and I have given you some I have given you 2 questions as well. Probably you will try them, and I have given the answers as well, right? Okay, so here we will finish the second part, right? And we will now quickly go into the third part, right? In the third part, we are going to discuss about decision making in Python, right? Very important topic, how we can make decisions in Python using if else, right? So you know these things, right? So let's see how it's done, right? So now what is decision making? Now this is a very fundamental topic, and this is not only available in Python, but decision making is a very common concept available in almost all the programming languages, right? Decision making is there. So if you want to like if you want to have a conditional code, then you better, I mean, you have to use this decision making concept. So what is a conditional code, right? Now, for example, let's assume that you are going to program a obstacle avoiding robot, right? Obstacle avoiding robot, and there is an obstacle, right? There's a wall, for example, and your robot is here, right? Now there is a normally executing code in the robot, right? Normally executing code. Now you are going to, like, let's say you have ultrasonic sensor or whatever sensor in the, or IR sensor in the front, right? And you have this robot, right? And this robot, like, there's a normally executing code. Normally executing code in the sense, like, when there is no obstacle, it's like moving forward, right? Moving forward. And you have to have a conditional code as well. That means, like, for example, when there is a object detected from the sensor, right? Like, let's say when there is an object detected from 10 centimeters from the robot, right? Then the normally executing code should be interrupted, right? Then you have to use, I mean, you have to like make a decision and you have to execute a different code, right? So what I'm trying to explain here, like, okay, for example, this this obstacle avoiding robot, in this situation, you have to stop it, right? Then you have like move around or like reverse or do whatever thing, but you have to interrupt the normal code, and a separate code should be executed. That means you have to have a conditional code. That means that code should not be executed normally, but that code should be executed when a condition is satisfied. For example, here, when the distance measured from the sensor is less than 10 centimeters, you have to have a different code, like to stop it or rotate backwards or rotate reverse it or do whatever thing, right? Understood? So that's where this concepts comes, right? So when you have a normal code and if you want to interrupt and execute it when the condition is satisfied like this, that's why you have to have conditional codes, right? Got it? So decision making is a very common concept, as I mentioned earlier, right? So we have like, I have mentioned how we can define, I mean, how we can use this decision making, right? I will do a different example in order to like make you understood, right, the concept of decision making, right? So let's say that we are designing a billing system, right? A billing system for a shop, for example, right? So we have to enter the amount, right? Amount of a customer for the purchased goods, right? For example, then like we have right, and we have a discount, for example, right? So we are going to provide a discount, right? And discount is right, by default it's 0, let's say, right? And the payable, basically it becomes right, the payable will be like the amount minus discount, right? So then what we are going to do, we are going to print like the amount, right? We are going to print the amount, we are going to print the amount, and then we are going to print the discount, and also then we are going to print the payable, right? So if you run this code, like nothing happens, right? So since the discount is 0, right? Since the discount is 0, nothing happens. Like whatever the amount that you are going to enter will be the payable, right? But let's assume that we have a condition, and we have a condition where, like, if the value of the purchased items are greater than, right? If the amount is greater than 1,000, right? If the amount is greater than 1,000, we are going to provide the discount, right? We are going to provide a discount, right? So that means the discount will be equals to like we will do it like this, like we will provide the percentage, 10% discount, right? So then the amount will be like amount minus amount into discount, right? So we are going to provide the discount as a percentage, right? Now what happens, right? So there's a conditional code available. So if you enter value, right? If you enter value less than 5,000, nothing happens, the normal code runs. So this is a conditional code, right? So that condition will be checked. So if you enter something greater than, let's say 2,000 is greater than 1,000, so you are going to get a 10% discount, and you are going to like get 200 discount, and the payable will be 200, and the payable will be 1,800, and where the discount is 10%, right? Now what I want you to understand, right? That means that this condition will be checked always, right? So this condition is checked. So this is how it happens. There's a condition given, right? And we check this condition. If that condition is true, then the interpreter, it has the access to go inside this conditional code and execute, right? So then this will be executed, right? If this condition is true, this will be executed. If this condition is not satisfied, or this is false, then the normal code will be executed, right? I mean, here also the normal code will be executed. I mean, after executing this, then it will go to the normal code, right? Then make a harina, make a karala normal code, make a vardina normal code. It's like a closed gate. It's like a closed gate. So whenever the code is running, right? So this condition will be always checked, right? If it is true, this will be executed, and then the normal code will be executed. If it is false, this won't be executed, and the normal code will be executed, right? So that's how it happens, right? Got it? So this is how we are going to define the condition in C++, Python. There's a very important thing that you need to understand, like the condition should be given, and the body of the condition is defined with this colon, right? And how we are going to define the body, how we are going to like define it, like you have to have the tab. This tab will be always like will be there, right? The tab will be always there, right? Now how you can like now, okay, here also let's say we are going to define the print the discount here, right? Now whatever the body of the if condition, you have to define it by keeping a tab, right? Whenever you remove the tab, that means that's the end of that body of the if condition. Then the if condition body body define tab right? Then tab if condition seems like in other programming languages you have a starting, most of the other programming languages you have a starting curly bracket and ending curly bracket, right? So that marks the body of the if condition. But in Python, no, it's not like that. There is a starting semicolon, starting colon there, but no end, right? End is not defined. So the end is defined by like when you remove the tab, then that marks the end of that if condition. Right? So that's how we are going to define the body. This is applicable not only in if condition, but loops, classes, functions, all the blocks, right? Understood? Got it? Right, so that's how we are going to do it, and this works fine. This is not greater than 1,000, so it's not giving you a discount, right? Now there cannot be some mistakes like this, right? Got it? They have to be precise with the syntax. Okay, all right. Then one more example, right? So if else, right? If else. So what happens in if else, right? So this is what happens in if else. Right? Like if you have if and else, so this is like a unit, right? So they act as a unit. What I mean by a unit. So here, like there's a connection. That means when you have this if and else, what happens? First, the if condition is checked, and if it is true, then the body of the if condition will be executed, then return to the normal code, right? And if it is false, definitely the else will be executed. Definitely the else will be executed. So what's the requirement that needed to be satisfied to execute the else code, right? Is that you have, whenever the if condition is false, the else will be definitely executed. Again, if එක හරි නම් if එක execute වෙලා එළියට යනවා normal code. If එක වැරදි නම් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම else එකේ තියෙන එක execute වෙනවා. Right? So the else code will be definitely executed when the if condition is false. Right? Got it? Understood? So that's how the if and else works. Right? So for example, now let's say you are in you are in a discount mode, and like if the value is greater than 1000, if the value is greater than 1000, you are going to provide a 10% discount, and if it is not greater than 1000, that means less than 1000, right? That means less than 1000, and then you are going to provide a discount of 5%, right? So discount will be applicable for every value, for each value, right? 5,000, 5% discount, like 25 discount will be there, right? Since now this is how it happens, right? We are going to enter 500. So 500, this condition will be checked first. No, it's not true. So this is false. Then this will be executed, right? Then discount becomes 5, and you are going to get a 25% discount, right? Then what happens? Right? Now what happens? You are going to get a 10% discount. How? The amount is 2000, so this condition is true. Then this will be executed, and then it goes to the normal code. Right? So that's what happens in if else, right? Then quickly, we have other form of decision making. If else, right? So this is when you have to check multiple conditions, right? You have to check multiple conditions. For example, right? Like let's say you are going to provide okay, something like this. So when the amount is less than 1000, you are going to provide the, like I want to show you something now here, like now these are very you have to keep this now. For example, let's say we have entered by a mistake, we have going to enter minus, right? So then this will be checked first, right? So we are going to check whether this is greater than 1000. No, it's not. So then definitely this will be executed, right? මේක වැරදි නම් අනිවාර්යෙන් මේක execute වෙනවා. ඒක minus ද මොනවද අදාළ නැහැ. මේක වැරදෙන්න විතරයි ඕනේ. Right? So this is what happens there. Right? So if this is false, definitely this will be executed. It's not going to check anything. If this is false, this will definitely be executed. Right? Okay, now here we are going to do it like this. Okay. So now I have multiple right, so this is an example for multiple if, elif, right? So what happens here, right? Now there are multiple if conditions available. Not if conditions, but multiple conditions needed to be checked here, right? Multiple conditions needed to be checked here. So this is how it works, right? So like there will be always a priority, right? That means the first condition will be checked first, right? And if it is true, right? If it is true, that's all. Then this code will be executed and that's all, right? We are not going to worry about the other conditions and it returns the normal code. පළවෙනි එකෙන්ම හරියොත් එච්චරයි. පළවෙනි එක execute කළා normal code එක කියලා, right? But when it's not true, right? When it's not true, what happens? Let's say this is false, then only this will be checked. That means in order the second condition to be checked, the first condition should be definitely false. Should be false, right? So then if it is true, that's all. Then this will be executed and returns to the normal, right? And also, if it is also false, then only the third condition will be checked. And if it is true, then right, this will be executed and returned to the normal code. And let's say if it is not true, then the else code will be executed. I mean, else is not mandatory, right? You can have else or not, right? But like now, I want you to explain this. Now, in order this to be checked, right? This should be false as well as this also should be false. Then only this will be checked, right? And in order to execute this, all of these upper conditions should be false in order to check this, and I'm not check this but execute this, right? So that's how it's done, right? So now here I have defined 3 conditions, like the amount is greater than this, and then likewise, right? So we'll see what happens, right? So if you enter like 525 discount is provided, and when you provide like value between 1000 and so this should be 1000 and 2000. So 10%, you can see 10% discount when it is between this range, right? So now 20% if this is in this range, right? And like let's say 5,000, right? So that means 5,000 is not working with this one, and this is not valid here, not valid here. So then only this will, this will be then definitely executed. So there will be 30% discount, right? Now I want you to understand one thing, right? So here when you enter 1500, this is what happens, right? So it checks the first condition. Since that is not false, sorry, this is false, right? This is false. Then only this will be executed. This will be checked, and that's true. Therefore, this will be executed. Now there's a very important thing, like right? If you put if conditions like this, and right, if you put if conditions like this, and let me remove the else for now, right? Now, right now, no. Oh, sorry, it's not going to work here. Right, we will go back to the original code. Right now, I want to show you one important thing. Right, you know that when this is not true, right? This is not true. That means that like amount is, that means this is false. This condition is false means amount is not less than 1000, right? Amount is not less than 1000. That's what it means. Amount is not less than 1000. That means the amount is, right? Indeed, it is greater than 1000, right? So therefore, if this is false, Then we are going to check this. That means we are sure that the amount is greater than 1000. So that means like we no need to check whether the amount is greater than 1000 and less than 2000. Why? We know that, in order to this condition to be checked, amount should be definitely greater than 1000, right? Otherwise, no chance of checking this. Make a වැරදුනොත් විතරයි මෙතනට එන්නේ. එහෙනම් මෙතනට එනවනම් මේක වැරදි. එහෙනම් 1000ට වඩා අනිවාර්යයෙන් වැඩි. එහෙනම් මේක තියෙන්න ඕනේ නෑ. Right? Here also, if this is false, then only this will be checked. That means we know that, okay, the amount is not less than 2000. That means the amount is definitely greater than 2000. So no need to check it like this. Sorry. Right, so this also works as the same. Right, so you can run this and see that this will work in the same manner, right? For example, 5, 10, 20, 30, right? So why? Like that priority is there. Like, you have to remember that order. If this is false, then only this will be checked. Right? But now there is a very there's an issue with this. Right? So let me get a copy of this one and I have a copy here. Now, if you remove this else, right? Now I will remove the else as well. Now, these if conditions act as independent if conditions. So there are no connection between them. Like, if this is true, then this will be executed. And no, it's not like this. These are three independent. This is not else ifs, right? Else if. These are not else ifs. These are independent ifs. So what happens, right? They will be executed independently. That means, for example, you can see if I enter 500, right? So all the three discounts will be applicable. Why? These are independent, right? 1000ත් අඩුයි 2000ත් අඩුයි 3000ත් අඩුයි. Right? දැන් මේක නැත්තම් මේක නෙමෙයි elf නෙමෙයි මේකත් elf නෙමෙයි. මේක නැත්තම් මේක බලනවා නෙමෙයි. So therefore, when you have independent if conditions, they will be executed independently. Right? So keep that thing in mind. Right? So for your knowledge, right? Okay. So that's it, right? Basically, that's it about conditions. Basically, now, so I explained you how there should be a tab, and that's how the body should be declared. And when the end of the body, you are going to remove the tab and type the code, so that marks the end of the body. So this is for similar for the conditions, loops, functions, classes, all the blocks available in Python, right? Okay, so we will now quickly go through the second point, the fourth part of our workshop today. Right? And in this one, we are going to discuss about loops, right? Now, loops, again, a very important concept and a very useful concept comes under programming languages. Now, this is, as I mentioned, now these are not only they are in Python. These are common concepts available in all the programming languages, almost all the programming languages. So loops becomes important when you need to get something done repeated. If you want to repeat the same thing, if you want to repeat the same code, right? Then the option is the loops, right? If you want to get the the same thing executed again and again, then you can use the concept loops, right? So there are two main types of loops available in Python: while loops and for loops. And nested loops are like basically a loop inside a loop, right? A loop inside a loop, that's called the nested loops. But two main type of loops available, they are while loop and for loop, right? So we will first discuss about for loop in Python. This is how we are going to define the for loop, right? For you have to have a variable I in range, right? 0, 10, 1. Now I will explain this. Right now, in order to have a loop, now loop is for the we call repetition. If you want to get something done again and again the same thing, so that's where we use this concept called repetition, right? So in order to do the repetition, we have loops, and there are two types of loops, for loops and while loops, and now we are going to first focus on for loops. Now when it comes to for loops, no matter for loop or while loop, there will be a in loops there will be a loop control variable, right? As the name suggests, it's the variable that controls the loop, right? There's a variable called loop control variable in loop, so which controls the loop, the execution of the loop, right? So loop is like repeating, right? Loop, you know the meaning, repeating. So here, like we can have, this is the loop control variable in this loop, right? So what happens now? Like when I print it like this print only once, right? This print only once, right? So if you want to print the same thing 10 times, for example, right? I'm going to use the concept loop. I mean, you can use it like 10 times, you can print it like this. I mean, the task is to, let's say, print this message 10 times, let's say. Your task is to print this message 10 times. Yes, you can do it like this. Doesn't matter. But if I ask you to print it like 100,000 times, right? Got it? If I ask you to print it like even 1,000 times, right? So this is not easy, right? So therefore, we can use the concept loops, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to initialize a loop like this, right? And the important thing in a loop is the loop control variable, one of the most important thing. So loop control variable, as name suggests, it controls the loop, right? So the loop, the initial value of the loop is given here, right? So when like there are 3 values, we will discuss about these things. So this is the initial value. I mean, this is the lower value. This is the upper value, and this is the step, or we call the increment or the decrement. Now we will refer this as increment, right? So what happens? I will be initially assigned to 0. That means there will be a variable called I, and it will be assigned to 0. Then what happens? I will be incremented by 1 plus 1. Right? I will be changed by 1, and it will go up to 10. It will go up to 10. Right? So that's what happens. Right? So that's the change in I. Right? So I is going to change from 0, then add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Likewise, 1 will be added, and the value of I will be incremented. And each time, right? Each time when the I is incremented, this whatever the code that you are going to include inside this loop block. Why I call this a loop block? You know that this is how we are going to define a block, right? So we are already familiar with if blocks. Now this is a for loop block or loop block, right? So whatever the code that you are going to put, I mean, include inside this loop will be executed for each increment of the I variable. I mean, each step of the I variable. Why I call like a step? Like there can be decrements as well, not always increments, right? Now this will go from 0 to 10. Now upper limit, this is the upper limit, right? This is the lower limit of, I mean, this is the starting value of I, and this is the upper value of I, right? You know, in Python, upper value will be always 1 less than the given value, right? I discussed this earlier. So it goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are 10, right? And 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 10. 0 to 9 means there are 10 steps, right? So this will be printed 10 times, right? So if you want to see the value change in I, right? This is how we are going to see it. Right? So you can see I0, 1. Now that's why tell you like for each step in I, the body here will be executed. දැන් මෙතනට මේ I වෙනස් වෙන හැම පාරකටම මේ body එක run වෙනවා, body එකේ තියෙන code එක run. Right? Now here what happens? Now it's going to go from 0 to 10 steps of 2. Now it's not going to like 0, 1, 2, 3, but 0, 2, 4, 4, 5, 6. I mean 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Right? Got it? Why? Now if you add 2 again, it becomes 10. So we have to go less than 10, right? So if you go, right? And you can do something like this as well, right? Right? So I'll start from 0 and it go up to -10 with steps of -1. So decrements. Now one decrement, each value will be decremented by 1 now. Right? So you can change it accordingly. Right? According to your preference, you can change these values, and you have defined the starting value, the upper value, and the step. Right? So basically, this is how it looks like. Right? 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 So 0 up to 9 with increments of 1. Right? So that's how we are going to have a loop. Right? And one important thing, right? So no need to always provide these 3 values. Right? You can do it with 2 values as well. For example, so if you provide like this, it works. Right? So now this will be considered as the starting value, and this will be considered as the upper value. And what about the increment? Increment is not given, right? The increment is not given. So when the increment is not given, if you are only going to provide the starting value and the upper value, then the increment or the step will be assigned to +1 by default. දෙකක් දුන්නොත් එහෙම increment එක default +1 වලට assign වෙනවා. Right? Got it? So you can provide 2 values as well, right? So they are like the starting value and the upper value, right? When the ending value is not given, I mean when the step size is not given, step will be assigned to default 1, right? Then like you can provide like a single value as well. When you careful listen, when you provide a single value, that means you are only providing the upper limit, the upper value, and the initial value will be assigned by default to 0, and the increment will be assigned to by default 1 +1. දැන් මෙතන එක value එකක් දුන්නාම එක value එක ගන්නේ upper value එකට. Initial value එක default 0 වලට වැටෙනවා. +1 එක තමයි step size එක වෙන්නේ. දැන් මෙතන වාට ඕන නම් එහෙම කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. මෙතන දෙකක් දෙනකොට when you going to provide 2 values like starting value and the upper value, right? But if you provide a single value, that will be taken as the upper value, and the default initial value becomes by default 0, and the increment becomes +1. So that's how it happens, right? So this is usually what we use, right? So like usually in our applications, most of our applications, we are going to start from 0 and we are going to go up to 10. I mean, not 10, but we are going to start from 0 and we are going to go with step size 1 and to an upper limit, right? Okay. So then while loops are quite the same, but with one difference, right? That means you have to define the initial value like this separately, and you have to define the upper value as a condition, right? So you are going to define the upper value as a condition, and then only you are going to print the, then you can do whatever the you can include whatever the task you want, whatever the thing you want to get repeated, right? And the step, the increment or the decrement also need to be done separately. Now, if you are familiar with I++, it's not working in, not available in Python. I++ is not available in Python. I mean, you are familiar with I++, I hope you can remember, but it's not available in Python. Instead, you can use I plus equal 1. Yes, I plus equal 1, or you can use I equal I plus 1. Right? So the while loop, I mean, right? The output of the while loop is same as the for loop, but the implementation is a bit different. The syntax and everything, initial value should be defined separately, and the upper value should be defined as a condition like this, and you have to have the increment inside the loop. Right? Now you may be wondering why we have like two types of loops available, like while loop and for loop, right? So that's depend on the application. I mean, like usually when you have like usually what I'm doing, if you have infinite loop, I prefer to use while loop, right? For any other loops, if you need any other type of loop, I use for loop, right? That's how I use, but I mean, for different applications, we can use for loop or while loop as you wish, but it does the same thing, right? For some applications, using while loop is easier than using for loops, and for some applications, it is easy to use for loop than while loop, right? We'll discuss later, right? Okay, and regarding the for loop, we have to discuss few other things, right? For loop is a very handy loop, and for loop is a very efficient tool to use in Python, right? So it could be used with lists as well, right? Now here you can see there is a list called my list, right? And what you can do now, if I want to, let's say, print the value of this list, you know that we can run this loop with like to the number of elements in this one, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry, 6. So you can manually put it like 6 as well, right? But you know that we have learned that we can take the number of elements in the list using the length, right? So you can get it like this, right? So then if you print I here, right? So what happens now? I goes from 0 to 6, right? So we have provided the upper limit, so it's 6, right? It's 6, and length of my list is 6. So this goes 6 times, and starting from 0, and the step size will be 1. Since we haven't defined them, so we have given only the upper limit. So this will run only, I mean, by taking initial value 0 and the increment as +1, right? So you can see like this. So instead of printing I can print my list type. So that means my list 0. Now you can see I changes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I put like my list I here, what happens? Then it refers to the 0 element of the list, the 0 element of the list, first element of the list, second element, third element, fourth element, and the fifth element of the list, right? Right. So now you can see the values here, values in the list, right? Understood? And then what we can do, right? The same thing without doing it like this, right? Now, right? So clearly see the difference, right? Here, I'm going to change I from range. I mean, here, this is how this happens, like 0 to 6 increments of 1. So that's how I run. I mean, I runs here, right? 0 to 6, right? Then we are referring to my list type. Like that means my list 0, my list 1, my list 2, likewise. So this goes to 5, right? Not 6, right? Got it? So this is what happens here. Like, so this highlights what happens. Right. I goes from 0 to 5. So my list 0 means this. My list 1 means this. Likewise, we are going to access it. But instead of doing it like that, we can do it like this. For I, now carefully see the difference. For I in range. Now here we are changing I from 0 to 5. But here no. We'll say like for I in my list. I in my list. Now what happens? I is not changing from 0 to 6. Instead of that, I directly becomes the values, the elements of the array. මෙහෙම දැම්මම I කෙලින්ම මේ values බාටපත් වෙනවා. I 0 to 6 නෙමෙයි. I කියන්නේ කෙලින්ම මෙන්න මේ values බාටපත් වෙනවා. Right? So first, the first run, I becomes this. In the second run, I becomes this. And third run, I becomes this. Likewise, it will run, right? So now here we are not printing like my, here you can see my list I we are printing. So my list 0, my list 1, my list 2. But here we are printing directly I. Now I is not 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I becomes directly the value of the array. Right? So this is the comparison between these two. Right? So this is a very handy tool. Like, I mean, we can use it very, I mean, without any like the finding the range and everything, we can define it very simply. It's the same output, right? But different implementations. Here what happens for I in my list, what will happen, right? So I directly goes to like these values, not 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I becomes the values in there, right? Got it? So no need to define the range or no need to define those things. So you can directly provide it like this. Right? And also yeah. And also for loops can be used for right? For loops can be used for creating arrays as well. That means my list. So now we can create an array using a loop like this. Now there are many handy tools available in Python. That's why I'm explaining a few of them, right? So I can define it like this as well. My list equals 0 for I in range 10. Now there are two things. So this loop decides how many values will be there in this array, right? So there will be 10 values. Why? Since this loop run 10 times, right? And this decides what is that value, right? For now, here, this will run 10 times and 0 will be assigned each time. That means you are going to see a array like this, right? So for each array, I mean, for each loop execution, 0 will be assigned to the array. So this loop execute 10 times, so 10 zeros will be there, right? And if you put I here, what happens? So I will be assigned for each and every loop execution, right? If you put like I squared will be assigned in each loop execution, right? Got it, right? So there are the for loop can be used like this for your implementations as well, array creations, right? Creations of array, right? And right, so there's one important thing like loop control statements, right? So if you have a chance to go through, as I heard, like there will be more workshops coming, I'm not sure, but anyway, like if you have the chance to like organize a workshop like image processing, right, or machine learning, right, then you will see that how we can use these concepts that we learn, right, in applications, right? Today what we are doing is basically quickly going through the concepts and the tools available in Python and the application. Like we have to do real applications, then only you will see how we can apply these concepts in the real world applications, right? So I will go through this as well. This is a very important thing. Loop control statements, right? Loop control statements in Python, right? So there are three main loop control statements available in Python, like break, continue, and pass, right? So let me get this one. Right? I mean, you may be wondering why you are doing this. Right? It makes no sense, but this will be used for, like, we have to use them where it makes sense, right? But today for the application, I'm going to only use them in right? Only use them in this kind of dummy examples, right? Okay. So I'm going to have a condition here, right? I'm going to check whether I is equals to 534, right? 534, and I'm going to break it, right? Now, if this is not there, what happens, right? What happens? You can see it execute normally, right? So normal values will be printed, right? But I'm going to do something like this. Right? When the loop is running, I'm going to check each iteration of the loop. I'm going to check whether I is 534. If it is 534, I'm going to break it. Break in the sense, like the loop will be, the execution of the loop will be interrupted, and it will be like the loop is broken. Loop will be broken. Loop එක එතනින් execute එක නවත්තනවා. Loop එක කඩනවා. Right? දැන් බලමු 534 තැනට ආවම මේක නවතිනවා. Right? Let's see. Right? So 134 is not 534, so it prints. Right? And this also not satisfied, so it will be printed. Then at the third execution, it is equal to 534, so the loop will be broken. So there are many real-world applications of these things, but we will have discussed them later, not today. Right? We are only discussing the concepts today, right? As I mentioned. Now the other thing is continue, right? So continue simply skip, right? It skips this particular value, right? So let's see. Sorry, you have to have continue here. Right? Now you can see 534 is not printed. So what happens when 534 is detected in the loop iteration, right? So it's not going to go to this, right? Instead of doing it, it skip the, it skip the remaining part, right? So when this condition is satisfied, the remaining part will be skipped and go back to the next value, next iteration. මේක run වෙවි continue එකෙන් කරන්නේ මොකද්ද? මේ condition එක satisfy වුණාම එතනින් පල්ලෙහාට යන්න නැතුව ආයේ ඊළඟ value එකට යනවා. ඊළඟ iteration එකට loop එක. Right? මෙතනින් break වෙනවා. මේකෙන් break කරන්නේ නැහැ. මේකෙන් ඒක skip කරලා ඊළඟ එකට. That's what happens, right? And we have one other thing called pass, and it basically does nothing. It does nothing, right? It's actually just nice. Just right? I mean, if you have a pass, it makes no change to the code, right? Then why the pass is there now? See that you are still thinking. Now you are developing a code, and you haven't still figured out how to do this, right? So you have a loop, and you don't know how to write the body of the loop, right? So then you can keep it like pass, and you can write the other codes. You can later you can write the code here. Otherwise, if you don't have anything here, this will give you error. You have to have something in the body. So in order to have something in the body, in order not to get the error, you can have this pass, right? So that's the usage of pass. Otherwise, pass is good for nothing, right? Okay. So you have like combining loops and conditions. There is a quiz given, right? So probably you can try these things, right? So I will provide you the explanations of this later, but I hope you will try them yourself, right? And see whether you can come up with solutions. And these are basically, this quiz, the third quiz is basically from the conditions and loops, right? Okay, so I'm going to now move on to the last part of today's workshop, functions, right? Functions in Python, a very useful concept, right? And we will go through the functions and see how we can implement functions in Python, right? So before going on to a function, you have to identify where you have to use Python functions and what's the use of, what's the application of a function, why we have to use functions, right? So function is a nothing but a organized set of codes, right? Organized set of codes. So function is a set of codes. Function එක කියන්නේ code set එක. අපි දැන් මේ implement කළාගේ code set එක. But what's the specialty? That it's a reusable code segment. Reusable code segment. That means once a function is defined, the same function could be used again and again, right? In many places. Right? Understood? Right? Understood? Right? So that's the use of a function, right? Understood? Right? Okay. So now let me define a function. Right? So let me define a function in Python. When you are going to define a function in Python, you have to worry about these items in a function, right? So first one is the def keyword. So this is how a function looks like, right? In Python, you have the def keyword, right? So def is a common keyword in functions, right? That means no matter what the function, it should be started with the def keyword. That means def means that you are going to define a function. Def කියන්නේ function එකක් define කරනවා කියන්නේ, right? Def is not the return type. Now probably you have implemented functions in other programming languages like void, whatever the function, and like this, right? So you have defined functions like this in other programming languages probably, right? So it's something like this, right? But this is the return type. Now this can be int, this can be float, this can be char, this can be anything. But Python, no return type. Now in Python, you know that we are not worrying about the data type, right? So even when you are defining the variables also, we didn't discussed about data type. So even in the functions, we are not going to define data types, right? So the first parameter that you are going to have in a function is a keyword. That keyword is to use to like say that we are going to define a function here, def, right? Then the function name. So the function name could be anything. So this is identifier. What do you mean by identifier? I discussed earlier that identifier is a customized name given by the user. So here this function name is given by you, right? Then we have a set of parameters. So this is these are the basic elements you can find in a function, right? Then the function body, right? The function body starts with a colon, and you have to have this tab and write whatever the right code. Understood, right? Got it? So now I'm going to define a function for, let's say, a very simple function, right? Def, and the function, the usage of the function is like the name of the function is cal average. Then it takes 3 parameters, A, B, C, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to like calculate the average like A, B, C, and divide it by 3. So that's the That's the task of this function. Right? Calculating the average is the task of this function. Right? The task of this function. Right? Then I'm going to print the average. That's what this function basically does. Right? So I have defined a function called cal average. So now what are these? These are parameters. So we call arguments, right? A, B, C. There are 3 parameters, and what we do, we get the average of those 3 parameters. We add them up and divide by 3 in order to take the average, and we make it equal to the average, and then print it, right? So that's what we do here, right? A very simple function, right? Now this is how you are going to define a function. This is called the function definition, right? So you have defined the function body and the function type and everything, the parameters and everything is defined here, right? Then in order to use this, what you have to do, you have to call it. Function should be called, right? So this is how we are going to call it, right? For example, when you are going to define it and later, this is how we are going to call it, right? So you can pass parameters like this. Okay. So at the function call, you have to pass parameters, right? So here I pass 3 parameters, right? Here I pass 3 parameters. So what happens? This goes here. This goes here. And this goes here, right? So 10 will be passed to A, 20 will be passed to C, 30 will be passed, sorry, B, 30 will be passed to C, right? So that's how you are going to pass values to the function like this, right? A, B, and C, right? So the values will be passed like in the order, right? 10 will be passed to A, 20 will be passed to B, right? So then you can see the average of these 3 values. Simply. Oh, sorry. sorry. I have mistaken with this C++. Sorry, this should be print. So this is happens when you are working with multiple programming languages. Okay. Cout is used in C++ to print. Okay. Right. So we are going to see the average. Now, can you remember that I told that I told you that that this is a reusable code. Once a function is defined, that is a reusable code, right? That means you can like call it multiple times. Same code, right? The same code could be reused for different applications. I mean, with different values, for example. See, the same now. Like otherwise, you have to write the same code again and again, right? So this calculation should be done again and again for these values, these values, these values, this, right? So you have done the same operation again and again, right? So if you don't use a function, right? But here now we have organized code, right? So which takes 3 parameters and calculate the average of them and print it, right? So this could be reused, right? Reused in the sense, what we can do is basically we can pass separate values, different values, and use the same function again and again. So reusable code, function is a reusable code, right? Got it. Understood? Hope you understood how a function is can be used and what's the application of a function. And first you have to define the function definition. Then you can call it, right? Many times as you want, right? Okay. So then right. So we will now go through there are 4 main types of functions available in Python. We will go through that as well, right? Now, in order to explain that, I have a function defined here, a separate function called my function, which takes 3 parameters like ABC, right? ABC, which takes 3 parameters ABC. Now, then what's the task? I mean, what we are going to do inside this function is just print them, right? So we are going to just print them and ABC, right? So whatever the values passed here will be printed, right? So that means when you pass 10, right? So 10 will be 10 goes to A and hello goes to B and this 20.5 goes to C, right? So then we print them, right? So then we print them. So what happens when you run this? No issues, it works, right? But here I'm going to call the same function, right? I just passed 2 parameters, right? So now you are going to get an error. It says my function missing required positional argument. That means, okay, all right, so you are trying to call the function, but you have not passed a parameter to C. You have only passed parameters like A and B, like they will be passing the order, right? That means, okay, this 10 goes here and this goes here and no value is passed to C, right? So now this gives an error, right? So these type of functions are called required argument type functions. Required argument. That means when there are arguments, you have to pass each and values for each and every argument, right? So here also you can't now. This is obvious, right? So you can't work with 2 and definitely won't be able to work with 1, right? Got it? So in order to overcome this issue comes in required argument type functions. The default argument type function is introduced, not introduced, but they are. So in that case, what we can do is we can, in the function definition, we are going to assign some default values. See, now in early case, like we have only ABC, but here in the default argument functions, what we are going to do, like we are going to assign some default values, like A equals this, B equals this, C equals this. That means when you pass like values, they will be replaced, right? So when you pass values, A becomes 10. When you pass hello to here, B becomes hello. But when you pass no value to a particular value, function, particular parameter, that will be assigned to the default. That will be remain in the default. දැන් මෙතන C pass කළා නෑ. කලින් එකේ error එකක් ආවා. මේකේ error එකක් එන්නේ නෑ. ඇයි? මේකේ C වල default value එකක් දීලා. Right? So that will be taken as the value. So no matter whether you haven't passed it or not, right? Now, why this is so important, right? So if you have done Java and if you have like, I'm not sure whether you are familiar with this kind of application, but in Java, like when you are going to define, like let's say you are going to design a PC application or software, right? In order to have a button, in order to define a button, in order to design a button, right? The text of the button, the background color, the foreground color, the hover color, and the font size, the width of the button, the height of the button, and many parameters, like 20 odd parameters should be passed, right? But if you want like a button with the gray value and Times New Roman text and like with let's say the button text is okay, right? No need to pass all the values, right? You can define like, with default values, right? Default text, default font color, default background color, right? So without passing like 2 values, you should be able to, right, define that button, right? So that's why the default functions are there, right? Otherwise, like if a buttons need like 20 parameters, when you create buttons, you have to pass all the parameters to the function, right? Now you can even call it using 1, right? See, so then B becomes a space, like okay, we will do something like this. So then B becomes like no value is passed to B, so B becomes X, right? And you can even call the function without any parameters, right? Then what happens? all the ABC will be assigned to their defaults, right? And the next type is the keyword argument type, right? Now, for example, right? Okay, here when you call it like this, my function 10, right? You know that definitely it will go to A, right? Why? They will be passed in order, right? So there is no way to pass it to C, right? There is no way to pass it to C. දැන් මේ 10 එකක් යවනග මේ 10 අපිට යවන්න ඕනේ Aට නෙමෙයි Cට. You can't do that. Why? Since these will be passed in the order, right? So the first value will be passed to A, second value will be passed to C, third value will be passed to C likewise, right? So there is another type of function called keyword argument type, where here, right? So you can call it by the keyword, right? So now here we say, okay, pass 100 to B, pass 90 to A, right? Otherwise, what happens now? For example, if you call it like this, 190, like this, what happens? A will be passed to, I mean, this 100 will be passed to A and 90 will be passed to B, right? But let's say that we want to pass this to B and A, right? Then you can call, okay, pass 100 to B and pass 90 to A, right? So you can do it like this, right? So that's called keyword. We are going to call it by the keyword, right? So those are the three main types of functions available in Python. So I explained it very briefly, right? Now let me go to the variable length argument functions, the final type, variable length argument, right? So, right, so variable length argument, right? Right. So it's something like this now, right? So let me define. Okay. Like, yeah, I will go with this kind of a function, right? So we have a keyword argument function, right? A and B. Okay. So then I'm going to call like so you know what happens. Simply this is what's going to happen, right? Now I'm going to change this B into star B, right? Star B. I'm going to change, like earlier it was A and B. Now I'm going to change it like A and star B, right? Then I'm going to run it, and now I'm going to pass these values. You can see B is now what? Can you understand? Can you identify this? Round brackets. What? A tuple. Now when you have this star B, it means it's a tuple, right? That means it's a variable length argument. When you like provide this star B, it becomes a variable length argument. That means you can pass any number of values, right? And they will be taken into this tuple, right? Now, usually we have two parameters. I mean, by default, we have two parameters, but the second parameter can take any number of variables. So that's called variable length argument function, right? See, you can pass any, right? So what's the application of this function, right? So you can define a function like this. Now, cal average. So you are going to have something like this, right? So if you want to calculate the average of like many values, what you can do? You can get the summation out. You can get the, since this is a tuple, you can get the summation like this, and you can divide it by the length. Right? So you can then print the average. So now what happens? Like this is a variable length argument function. That means like you can pass. Now I will print the right. So what you can do, like you can even pass one value. See? Right? Or even you can pass two values. Or even you can pass 10,000 values. Right? See? So the summation will be taken and the average divided by number of items and the average will be there. Right? So you can do it like that. Right? So that's the basic application of a variable length argument function. Right? Okay, so let me define let me discuss one more important thing. Right? Regarding the return of the functions. Right? Return of the functions. Now, usually in other programming languages, you know that a function can return only a single value. Right? A function can return only a single value. Right? So that's like in C++, C, Java, many other programming languages, a function can return a single value, right? But in Python functions has the ability of returning multiple values, right? For example, now this is like a function called add, which takes two parameters. Now here, the addition is taken to total and the total is returned, right? So how, you know how return function works, right? So in the function definition, you have parameters and values will be passed and you do whatever the calculation and you give the total, and then total will be returned back to the function call. Wherever the function is called, that return will be assigned there, right? So for example here, right? So this 10 will be passed here and 20 will be passed here, and the total will be calculated as the addition, and then it will be returned to this value. That's what happens as shown in this figure. So that's how the return works, right? So when you run this one, right, you are going to see 30. Okay, the value becomes 30 here, right? Right. And here I have defined a function called calculator, which takes two parameters, and I calculate the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, everything, right? And what we can do, we can return all those values, not on a single value, but we can return multiple values. So Python function has this ability. Python function, through a Python function, you can get return like many parameters, right? So it can be anything, any number of parameters, right? So here this returns 4: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So when you run this, right? So you are going to get a return, right? And this return will be like the 4 values, right? 4 values will be taken here, and those will be taken into a tuple, right? Those will be assigned to tuple here. See, it comes as a tuple, right? And the same thing, like if you want to get them into a separate, get them into separate variables, you can do it like this. So you can have 4 different variables like A, B, C, D. Then the addition will be assigned to A, subtraction will come to B, and these to C, and division to D. Right. Got it? So Python functions can return multiple values like this, right? Okay. So yeah. So now I will finish it from here, right? So we have gone through variables like strings, numbers, then decision making, list, tuples, dictionaries, decision making, groups, and then we discuss about Python functions. I'm not going to go beyond this, right? So this is more than enough for one day, right? So we have covered majority of Python basic concepts today, right? But the thing is now, right? So if you are new to programming, I'm not saying like that, but you are not new to programming. But what I have seen, most of you, not all, but most of you find it difficult to understand these programming concepts, right? So I also was the same situation in my first year as well, right? So I haven't learned programming earlier, right? So the thing is now, this is not maths. Programming is not maths, but programming is logical thinking, right? Logical thinking can say. So in order to get used to it, it takes time, right? So sometimes you may found it very difficult in your first year to learn C, right? I know, right? It takes time. So since this is not maths, right? So like, I mean, it's not maths, obviously, right? Why? Like I won't be equal to I plus 1, right? Right? So this is not true in maths, right? So this is not maths. So if you are good in maths, right? It doesn't mean that you will be good in, you will work fine in programming, right? No connection, right? So it's about logical thinking in programming, right? And also, it is something that you are not going to take by remembering anything, right? Now I can remember these syntax. I'm not going to refer any note or anything, right? I can remember these syntaxes. So that's due to the experience, right? That's due to the practicing, right? So that means I always write codes for different tasks, research projects, and like even for tutorials like this, right? So that's something obtained through experience, right? So in order to learn these practical subjects, I mean programming like subjects, right? You need the experience. You need the skill. I mean, this is not the knowledge. Programming is not a knowledge that you need to get. Programming is a skill that you need to obtain, right? So skills are obtained through experience, right? So that means usually what you have to do, right? So this is what I followed. You have many examples now. You got this material, so you have many examples available in your, right, with this material. So what you can do, what I usually do, right? I always try to understand each and every line of the code, each and every line of the code. So what happens here, what happens here, what happens here, right? So so don't do it like this. Okay, this code segment does this, right? And this code segment, this does this, right? Likewise, no, right? I mean, there are many other codes available, right? So I mean, when it comes to real world, right? Real world, codes, there will be like many large set of codes available, right? So this is not relevant to your one, but right. So you can't understand. You can't you can't understand a code by just saying, okay, this code segment does this. This code segment does this thing. No, it's not going to work. You have to, go through each and every line and understand, right? So that's the tip number 1. And the second tip, right? When you have already working codes, right? Change them, right? Change them and run again and see what happens, right? So change these things, and try to change these things and see what happens, right? Then you will understand the concepts better. And the third tip, right? Search in the internet, right? So there are now, this is not like 2010, right? So nowadays everything is available in the internet, right? And when you have examples, similar examples, the tip number 3, right? Tip number 3, find a similar example and try to adapt it to your task, your project, right? Change necessary things and try to adapt it to your project, right? Search and learn, right? So in order to do that, first 2 tips will help, right? You have to understand, like let's say, okay, there is a code written for a project similar to your project. But in order to get that working in your project, you need to understand each and every line of the codes, right? Understood? So those are the simple tips that I want to give you, right? And I hope to meet you in future workshops if it is possible, right? If it is available, I will be. I'm trying to meet you in like advanced workshops like image processing, right, or machine learning. So let's see the possibilities, right? And thank you so much. I hope you gain good knowledge, and we will probably see in our next workshops how we can apply them in real world applications. And please, until then, you can go through these materials and try to do your own work and try to understand line by line, right? And get this skill, right? So this skill needs the practice, right? So wish you all the best, and wish you all the best, and I hope you will use them in your projects and other tasks, right? So thank you so much, and we will meet again. And I
Sir.
think now it's for you, Lanka, to go to the Q&A session for you, right?
Yes, sir. We have a few questions, ladies and gentlemen. If you do have questions, please feel free to ask any of the organizing committee members. Okay, that being said, sir, we have a question for you here. Okay. Is Python a hardware-friendly language? Does it require more hardware power compared to some other bare metal programming languages?
Yes, indeed. Now, if you know Arduino, right, or any other microcontroller, right? So in microcontrollers, we write in basically C or C++, right?
C++.
So what happens in there are Python, like you can use Python. You won't be able to use Python in microcontrollers. There are chances, but it's not efficient since Python needs many libraries, right? Since Python, as I mentioned, is built on C++. So when you write a code, actually this code is going to be converted to a C or C++ code, and then it will be executed. So there are many libraries needed to convert these codes into C++, the ground level codes, right? Understood? So this Python is a high level language. It's quite easy for the user to implement codes, but there will be a conversion done by the computer in order to get it to a ground code, a low level code. And one of the most important thing now, Raspberry Pi, and there are these single board computers, as well as these NVIDIA Jetson computers where you can run neural networks. So in them you can run Python, but in Raspberry Pi, if you are familiar with Raspberry Pi, it has 1 GB RAM. It has to have 32 GB memory, right? And it has 1.2 gigahertz, right? So that needs more power, right?
All right, sir. So I believe for the gentleman or lady who asked the question, no doubts have been clarified. We have another question. Is there a concept of pointers in Python?
Yeah, there is, but not exactly similar to other languages like C and C++. Now, for example, this is also act as a pointer, right? This also act as a pointer, but dynamic memory allocation concepts are not popular in Python, right? Since actually no need to use dynamic memory allocation like in C++. That's the case.
Okay. Okay. We have a. Okay. We have a question. I believe this must be from a lady or gentleman who will be going for training soon. Are there any famous projects sir would recommend that we can implement in Python to include in our CVs?
Sorry,
Are there any famous projects sir would recommend that we can implement in Python to include in our CVs?
CVs, yeah, that question covers lots of scope. I mean, there are many, millions of projects are there, right? So the thing is, you have to have application first, right? So probably you are in your, let's say, internship, right? So in your internship, there's no use of doing random projects, right? So if for your internship, right, or your final year project or your third year, some of you are having third year design projects as well, right? So in that, if you can do something related to AI, that will be a huge benefit for your future, right? I mean, AI, image processing, now these are these fields, no matter you are now AI, deep learning, machine learning, these are now originally they are related to computer science, but electronics and electronic mechatronics related fields also now getting popular. But I wanted to say Now, in your internship project or in your final year or third year projects, try to do a project related to image processing or machine learning, right? Then it will be a huge benefit huge benefit when you are going to apply for a job or when you are going to apply for a like a master, right? Master in the future. And also like regarding the projects, I can't exactly suggest project, like there are many projects, so it should be application specific. I mean, application specific. Like otherwise, I can't exactly say I try this project and do it.
I believe they must have asked from field which sir would be like. Well, let's say what would be the top 3 projects sir would pick up, like hand pick, like if you were to decide it.
The thing is now, okay, I can't exactly say projects, but I will. I mean, I can say many projects like, okay, face attendance system for starters, right? Face attendance systems, like getting popular these days, right? You can use AI and image processing things, right? And also you can use this, you can do like something, self-driving cars, for example, self-driving cars related thing. You can build a miniature self-driving car, right? Very famous these days. And also other than that, like since you are engineering, other than that, there are many like computer-based applications like the social recommendations, right? Likewise, those things are also there. Yeah. And also farming, smart farming, harvesting. Nowadays, these things are there, like defect detection in plants, right? Defect detection in plants and harvesting time calculation, right? So aerial robots, those kind of applications.
Well, the kind of cards off. I think it just flustered you a bit because you had so many ideas come into your head. You were trying to figure out which is more specific.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That being said, last question for the day. I believe everybody wishes to. Okay. What are the more popular embedded platforms controlled by Python?
Embedded platforms, basically ROS operating systems, like robotic operating systems, works with Python and those computers in robotic operating system, robots, right? The operating, the computers in the robots need ROS and they are working with Python. And also when it comes to single board computers like Raspberry Pi, and also what you call this GPU based AI computers like NVIDIA Jetson Nano, NVIDIA Xavier, those things are working with Python. You can write these same Python codes in Raspberry Pi for these AI computers, right? And other than that, many cloud computers supports Python, and basically, like, I haven't seen, there are few, but in microcontrollers, Python is not supported due to the reason I mentioned earlier. But single board computers and AI computers, right? So they are supporting Python. So you can use it for many applications. Like, so if you are planning to use it for, I mean, if you are planning to implement a self-driving car, you can get the NVIDIA Jetson Nano and implement it, since you can like connect Arduinos. Sorry, you can connect cameras, you can connect sensors and all the other things, and then you can come up with the Python code you can come up with the Python code to control that particular robot or the car.
Okay, then ladies and gentlemen, I believe that will be the final question for the afternoon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the latter and final part of that. Now, before I head off for our final session, I would like to tell you all. Okay, I would like to tell you all that we have something special. We have some good news to tell all of you who were keenly listening to us this afternoon. So, Mr. Takshila has a YouTube channel where he talks about Python and various other program subject related matter. So please do go check it out. I believe the link will be placed in the chat box below. So do access it. As you go on with your project in AYUDAR, you will be needing Python, and this session, I believe, has helped you immensely. So I believe the YouTube link will be there. And yeah, there we go. The YouTube Python module tutorials. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, access us. Please subscribe to Sir and like his videos and go through here. And I believe it's well versed in exactly what Sir has been expressing with us today since the early morning. So yeah, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the a conclusion of this afternoon session. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part with us today. And to Mr. Takshila, on behalf of your time and your preparation and for everything that you've done, the Engineering Research and Innovation Club alongside the organizing committee at Project AYUDAR would like to give its fullest gratitude. And with that, I hope you would be, sorry, if you could, with that, I believe we would like to accept our humble token of appreciation for all your efforts. Is the screen being shared? Can everybody see the screen?
Let me stop the share.
All right, so yes, and with that, Mr. Takshila, please accept this humble token of appreciation. Thank you so much for everything, for the absolute gem of this session that you've given us. I believe that you gave our participants a different perspective on how to approach Python, as hard as it is. And you mentioned this multiple times, but you've also said that getting over it is easy, and just enjoying. It was quite enjoyable to listen to you speak and how to use Python, the programming language, in much more comfortable manner. I believe our participants received a lot of new and refreshing outlook on this demanding topic. So thank you so much, sir, for all your efforts, and we can't wait to have a new session. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, please go check out Takshila's YouTube channel, which has more programs planned out for the future. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to thank you all back at home for joining in with us for Project AYUDAR session on Python writing. It has been true. You have been truly a great audience. Thank you for the interactions as well as for taking part in this session. Do take the quiz that has placed out. You can use the materials that have been given for your future projects as well. Be mindful to always be careful. Be mindful and in what you do, and use the knowledge that you gain in this session for future projects as well. With that, we also excuse for the small dilemma that occurred earlier in the afternoon, and I hope, but we want to thank you all for being patient with us. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please stick with Project AYUDAR and the future programs to come. We have another surprise session coming in very soon. So stick with AYUDAR, follow our Instagram page, and follow the Instagram page of the Engineering Research and Innovation Club. Be a part of us. And with the conclusion, I would like to say thank you so much once again, everybody, Mr. Takshila, and to all the participants for joining in with us. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, the learning does not stop from here. It only continues from here henceforth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and have a wonderful Sunday. Wonderful Sunday.